Welcome everyone to Spoiler Warning featuring myself, Tom Colohue. This is the internet's premier wrestling news show where we dive into plenty of talk about wrestling in general, WWE, AEW, all the big hitters, plus exclusive news you can't find anywhere else, including some pretty big news recently about names such as Drew McIntyre, Becky Lynch, Mercedes Martinez now of course, and plenty more along the way. Our headlines today will be a focus on a new Drew McIntyre deal that isn't, the Creed brothers being called up, AEW and the frustration boiling over, Dave Meltzer turning on Tony Khan, Shane McMahon planning a return to the WWE, Ronda Rousey returning as we've mentioned in the title, and a little bit on future plans for Becky Lynch and the impact she's had with the people she has worked with. A little extra when it comes to a wrestling media war that went viral on Twitter, and you know how I love to talk about those, and a little bit of an update based on the discussions that we had on Friday about this here channel and this here Tom Colohue. But as we start out, please do remember we have 30 people here and 18 likes. By the time we reach 5 past, our current record is 33. If we can break that, it really does add a massive boost to the momentum of the channel. At the moment, we're only 2 off from 20, 2 for 20. If you can give me that, I'll be a very happy boy. So our first piece of news before I then jump into the chat is the return of Ronda Rousey. Now I'm not going to mess around and clickbait you. Ronda Rousey is not returning to one of the bigger promotions of wrestling. She was not having any plans or intentions to return to WWE, and to my knowledge she has very limited interest in returning to a promotion to that level. Martin, I have no idea why it's showing 235 likes. We have 22. I can see 22. That's doing pretty good. Not sure what's going on there, mate. Ronda Rousey is not planning to go to the bigger promotions. She's not particularly happy with her time in the big promotions, primarily because a lot of the media, a lot of the fans simply weren't particularly excited to have her, and it had a pretty negative impact on her as well, including her overall mental health in the company. She wanted to step away, and that is what the WWE provided. She had many opt-out clauses in her contract that would allow her to walk away whenever she chose to do so. It is believed in WWE that Ronda Rousey fell out of love with wrestling. With this in mind, then, she is returning to a local indie promotion, fairly recent and close to her, to help out a friend. Essentially, there are a number of wrestlers who have worked in WWE under the Four Horsewomen moniker, particularly the MMA Four Horsewomen, and she's doing a little bit of work to help one of them out. Ronda Rousey herself is not particularly interested in returning to wrestling full time, but is happy to get back in the ring for her own fitness levels and to basically help out a friend. So our top story essentially is that Ronda Rousey may be stepping into the ring for another match. And as Eve is rightly pointing out, thank you Dan, it is a charity event as well. She is not looking to come back to the big leagues. She is helping, she is supporting, and she is keeping fit. I'm not one to bury the lead on this one. Yes, I know it says a Ronda Rousey return. She is returning to wrestling, but no, she is not likely to be making an impact in WWE or AEW anytime soon. That said, I will point out that this was very much the case when Ronda Rousey left the WWE after WrestleMania 35. Initially, her deal was said to be a 3-year deal. I myself broke the news that it would only be a 12-month deal, and that's how I earned the ire of one particular wrestling journalist who I remember not very fondly. But it was one of those reports where I couldn't quite believe it myself, but it was a 1-year deal. She did leave quite unhappy with wrestling in general by the end of it, but was eventually convinced to come back by the encouragement of people such as Triple H and Charlotte Flair. I don't believe it's impossible that we see Ronda Rousey again, but as of right now, there is no interest in a return to the big leagues, as it were. Keep calling them big leagues, but you get what I mean. One more like gets us to 30. We definitely don't have 235, and it looks like that's a glitch that caught out a few people. I do wonder why that's happening, because it's definitely not the case. Spider-Boss says, hello Tom, sorry to miss spoiler warning on Friday. I was in a party with some friends. You don't need to apologise for having a good time, sir. Sean says, hello Tom. Hello Sean. Spider-Boss says, according to BWE, and I stopped reading because BWE is behind a mask at this point, a locked account, and is not anyone with a name or a face attached to it. Also, they did do the Velveteen Dream thing, guys. Come on. Bailey says hello, Tom, as well. Hello, Bailey. Chris says, good evening, Tom. I got you on for background noise while I prepare for the Raw watch-along on OLE. For those not aware, we don't do a watch party here on the Tom Colohue channel for Raw, but Chris does host one over on the OLE, or Our Local Establishment channel, sort of the sister channel to the Tom Colohue channel at times, so by all means, check that out. Michael says, hi, Tom. Hello, Michael. How the devil are you? Thank you very much, Martin, for the generosity there. Give a very generous donation. Says, Tom is here. Let's go. Hello, everyone. Thank you kindly, as always, for your continued generosity. I very much appreciate it. Let's catch up on the YouTube side of the chat. Richard says, hello, Tom. Is the BWE and Dave Meltzer report true that the Creeds have been called up? More on that shortly. Roger says, is Raw going to be in the UK seeing the WWE's on a UK tour? Typically, when it comes to the UK tours, we do get a Raw event, but lately we've seen more SmackDown than Raw. After all, when it comes to the time difference, they do tend to avoid that if there are going to be spoilers, so they would likely record it without necessarily having a Raw there, so they would have a number of live events instead. Daniela says, good evening, Tom. Good evening, Daniela. Richard says, hello, Tom. Are we any closer to an Evolution 2 PLE? We are not. The original Evolution pay-per-view was essentially an apology to the female wrestlers on the roster for not including them in Saudi Arabia, and also an effort to make good on the idea that, eventually we'll have women wrestling in Saudi Arabia and it'll all be fine and we'll change the world. Well, they do have women wrestling in Saudi Arabia now, so they see no interest in having another women's only pay-per-view. This does include Triple H, by the way, who a lot of people suggested his return would shepherd in a new Evolution pay-per-view. That is not going to happen. Hello, Leon. How are you? Welcome, Gomar. Welcome, Dan, of course. Eric says, any news on if Ivy Neal comes with the Creeds tonight? More on that shortly. Razal says, hi, Tom. Spoiler warning, start an hour late. Do you guys have daylight savings or something? Yes, we do. Over here in the UK, we have daylight savings time right now, and it will happen on Friday as well. A week from now, the US leaves daylight savings the same as we did, and as such, we will sync back up. But you do have a week, a glorious week, where wrestling is not on at 1 o'clock in the morning and is instead on at midnight. It'll catch a lot of people out if they're watching Crown Jewel. I, of course, as you know, will not be doing so. Spider-Bell says, nice short about Meltzer turning on AEW. More on that shortly. Let me just catch up where we are. Squid says, okay, hey Tom and crew, hope everyone is well. Welcome, Squid. McKay says, I think she's just going to retire, to be honest. I find that likely. She did retire pretty much entirely the last time out, but it didn't stick. Hello, Marcel. Doing well, thank you. Justin Sanchez says, any news on Jade Cargill? Not beyond what I've already reported. The WWE is still putting plans together for Jade Cargill and has not, up to this point, actually made a firm decision on what she's going to be doing at WrestleMania, but I would be expecting it soon. Sean says, I thought Ronda retired from wrestling. She essentially did. This, as I say, is a very, likely a one-time thing, a very rare occurrence. Roger says, I met the Impact Wrestling wrestlers at a UK tour meet and greet. Glad to hear it, mate. Hope you had a good time. Sean says, Meltzer speculates Ronda will go to AEW. We'll see if that ever happens. Once to say, Tom, Dave Meltzer said that Ronda Rousey in AEW will only work if Mercedes Money signs of AEW, which she will. Thoughts? I don't see any reason why there'd be any connection between those two wrestlers, but it's nice to see that he's reporting she's going to sign with AEW. Thank you, Chris, indeed. Spider-Boss says, I think Ronda's second run in WWE didn't work because it was a bad moment, especially because fans noticed she took Mercedes Money / Sasha Banks' spot. To be clear, she didn't take the spot, it was given to her. Hello, Dan, how are you? Noob says, hello, Tom, how are you doing? Doing very well, thank you, Noob. Welcome to the show. Mine says, gone after a refresh, mate. Clearly YouTube's still glitching from yesterday's outage. I was not on YouTube Live yesterday, so I'm glad I wasn't because it looks like it was a little bit of carnage. Evening, Ross. Jordan says good evening as well. Says hope you're okay. Doing well, thank you. Mustafa says they're seeing into 2024 with the highlights. It would be lovely, don't get me wrong, but I'm still very happy with 32 likes as well. It's a pretty good start to the day, what can I say? Ross says the Meltzer vs. Rock video was excellent. Thank you, Ross. I appreciate that. I'm very proud of the work that we're doing on the channel at the moment, particularly when it comes to showing what wrestling media actually does. And how the desperate tribalism to follow certain people and only believe certain people is going to have a negative effect on not just us, but wrestling in general. I'm not going to read that one, Squid. I just don't think it's worth reading that one out. You're entitled to your opinion, but I don't really want to put that out there myself, because as someone who does have mental health issues myself, I am never going to sit here and say, oh, that person's mentally frail. I don't like that. Eric says, good evening, Tom. How are you doing? Doing well, thank you, Eric. James says, AEW just spending/losing money with all the empty arenas. Seems like it's becoming a money pit. They are not losing money at this point in time. They likely do need to still let a few people go before they start making a huge amount of profit, but they are roughly breaking even at the moment. Ticket sales is not their main source of income. Spider-Bell says, it surprised me Meltzer turning on AEW. Thought he would be in Tony Khan's pocket forever. He was never in Tony Khan's pocket. More on that shortly. Backwards says, hey Tom, any idea when we see a Damian Priest cash in? I still believe it will be way back to WrestleMania before we actually get to that moment. That said, I did a show. Thank you, Dan, for clarifying the situation there. When I get to it, I'll read it out, but I appreciate you clarifying the sourcing and the information there. Right, so, yes, as regards Damian Priest, I was in the Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure, which will be live on Wednesday as well, by the way, for a mailbox edition, if you want to check that out. But when it comes to the situation ongoing, when it comes to the Damian Priest cash-in, he did convince me that it would be a great idea if Damian Priest did cash in at Crown Jewel, primarily because I suspect it's very possible that Seth Rollins arrives to Crown Jewel with the championship and Cody Rhodes leaves with it. Spider-Boss says, apart from Timeless Tony Storm, the AEW Women's Division has been lackluster, and that unfortunately has been the case for a while. Yo, Daniel, how you doing? Michael says, from Sports Illustrated, always appreciate the bring the exact quote. Danielson was hurt last week on Collision during a superb match against Andrade, doing damage to his orbital bone, Sports Illustrated has learned. The injury will require surgery. Danielson did wrestle 5 nights later on Dynamite in a tag match with Claudio Castagnoli against Kazuchika Okada and Orange Cassidy, but Castagnoli carried the bulk of the match. Bryan Danielson is not someone to stop wrestling just because the doctor says he's going to die. Just going to throw that out there. Roger says, do you think Natalya will beat Chelsea Green? Honestly, no. I think they're trying to build Chelsea Green at this point, and Natalya historically has been the one to do that. Hey, Ricky, how you doing, mate? Leon says, Lance Anoy and Juicy, I imagine is that Finoy? Is that supposed to be Fatu? Recently got released by MLW. Any news on WWE interest? Some, yes, primarily because Roman Reigns wants there to be interest, so I don't know if necessarily that'll be long term. That said, it would certainly be a good way to set the cat amongst the pigeons at Crown Jewel. Sean says, I remember you saying Becky ran out of challenges in NXT. She had challenges like Jacy Jane, Gigi Dolan, Tia Hale, Sol Ruka, Kiana James, Blair Davenport, Roxanne Perez, and Cora Jade. Yes, and there is a number of different reasons why that didn't quite work out. Becky Lynch did run out of challenges on the list that she was looking to work with. There was a number of people who either weren't available at the time, there wasn't a real intention to use them in a wrestling match in that manner, or they were saving them for something else, who they kept out of Becky Lynch's way. Martin says, I know you talked about it last week, but Flair and AEW ruined it for me and confirmed it wasn't an alternative anymore, just WCW 2.0. Sad to say, but it's everything TK promised it wouldn't be. I'd imagine there's quite a lot going into that when it comes to the idea of WCW 2.0. I don't personally believe that. I do think, though, as I've discussed previously, Tony Khan has done a great job, but he's starting to see some serious diminishing returns, and I do believe he needs a much better team around him. Fair enough, Martin. That is definitely a bad time to have some issues with live. Spider-Boss says, quite funny the exchange between SRS and Steve Carrier from Ringside News last week. I have them both blocked, so I would not know. Will, thank you kindly for another generous donation. Says, if how Tony Khan books the women's division and bringing in Ric Flair and now the locker room upset, it feels like the honeymoon is over. The honeymoon has been over for a little while now. We were waiting for the moment when we got to sort of the real numbers of what we could expect from AEW. That day has been here for a little while. I will get to more details as the whole locker room upset idea shortly. Thank you, Martin. Says, your tips and ideas have helped me so much and much appreciated. I'm very glad to hear that. Your success is my success is our success, and we can all help each other. We really can. Raymond says, hello, Tom. Great to see you. Hope the family is doing well. Doing very well, thank you, Raymond. It is nearly Halloween after all. I'm not going to get to take them trick-or-treating, unfortunately, but I at least get to hand out chocolate and candy to some of them. Spider-Boss says, do you see the Judgment Day losing the tag team titles? Yes, because no one lives forever. Here's a point at which Dan clarifies. Says Dave, as in Dave Meltzer, didn't say Ronda would go to AEW. He answered a question on if Ronda could go to AEW show coming up in LA. He said he would doubt it, as doesn't know who would benefit, as she's a lot of money and the shine is off her now, which is definitely not untrue. What I will say, and I've said this before, Dave Meltzer is the most misquoted person in wrestling. The most misquoted person in wrestling. And let me explain why. A lot of what he says in the Wrestling Observer is actual speculation, and it's phrased as speculation. But because it's Dave Meltzer and historically he's been the guy to go to for clicks, people report it as fact. He might not report it, he might not have any intention of reporting it, but he can't control what people say that he's reported now, can he? Richard says, hello Tom, do you have any news on Tegan Knox's injury and how long she'll be out? Unfortunately, when it comes to Tegan Knox, there is a little bit of mistrust, not necessarily in her as a wrestler, but in her injury record. I'm interested to see how she is used going forward, but what I will say is, of those people who worked with Becky Lynch, she seems at this moment to be the least likely to be elevated, unfortunately, because of this ongoing situation. Spider-Boss says, finally, WWE will do something with the women's tag team titles. Those titles will be defended in NXT tomorrow. It is about time that we finally did something with those championships. They are the secondary championship, and Becky Lynch has been treating the NXT championship like the secondary championship just to get more women on TV. Keyshawn says, Meltzer has some fans deluded defending Tony's booking by saying wrestling doesn't need stories and characters. Wrestling doesn't. Pro wrestling certainly does. Razar says they kind of feel like Priest might cash in at Crown Jewel. He'll probably lose to Cody and then cash in later in the night. See, the reason I don't think that's going to happen is because I think Seth Rollins versus Drew McIntyre will open Crown Jewel, which then makes it impossible for Damian Priest to lose to Cody and then cash in later. Sean says, congrats to MJF on becoming the longest reigning AEW World Champion. Who do you see being a threat to him? I still think Adam Cole could come back around. That said, right now, there's not too many people who could genuinely be a top-level threat. I've been able to sort of spot where we're going with most of the championships. I was confident that Chris Jericho would be the first champion. I was confident after that was going to be Jon Moxley, Kenny Omega after that, etc., etc. Hangman Page. It seemed pretty clear where we were going. So now, with MJF, is the first time I'm genuinely not sure. And that's kind of awkward. Then it says, Jerry Lynn blasts a report claiming there is creative frustration in AEW, citing a report from Dave Meltzer that talent is getting plans at the last minute and ideas are being brought to the table. To be clear, Zane, Jerry Lynn also confirmed the report. Just want to throw that out. Dan says, I was literally just writing the same thing about honeymoon period. Devon says, any Mercedes money news? Not at this point in time. Until she is ready to return to wrestling, there is not likely to be any Mercedes money news. Just to be very clear on that one. Martin, thank you very kindly. I very much appreciate it. Gifts 5 channel memberships to the channel. These go to Raymond, Devon, David, Edward and Brad. Please remember to say thank you everyone who has received those. You do get access to the members only content. One of the latest videos is actually a little bit more information about the Dave Meltzer versus The Rock video, particularly the use of the Wrestling Observer as a source on the Wrestling Observer when the Wrestling Observer is proven wrong, but not mentioning that it's the Wrestling Observer when it's proven wrong. I go into a little bit more into my research process as well and how you can do similar and find out the same things. And hopefully you guys enjoy videos like that because I'm going to try and make them a bit more regular as to my process, my research and what I generally do when I'm creating the content that I make. Thank you very kindly, Martin, for a very generous donation. I very much appreciate you, sir. Spider-Boss says WWE made official Cena vs Solo Sikoa at Crown Jewel. First reported here on Spoiler Warning. Yes, it was. I appreciate that that reinforcement, Spider-Boss. It was one of those where it was pretty clear where it was going, but it was nice to get the confirmation. Devil says, according to BWE. Chris says, Uncle Dave always says things like, I could see that happening. Once again, I feel that confirms where what I was saying on that one. He does say things like that, but that is speculation. He's not hiding that it's speculation, and yet is reported as fact. Keyshawn says, do you think we could see Priest versus Finn match at Mania? I think we could. I don't think we will. I think they'll last a little bit longer than that. Peace to say, buddy. Lurking. Welcome, Pete. Nice to see you, mate. Dan says, RE Dave, absolutely spot on. Also, he's very, what's the word? Well, if you joke a show had 1 million in attendance, he will go, well, it wasn't a million. Let me check my notes. It was 24,738. To be fair, there are some things, when it comes to Dave Meltzer, that he's absolutely beyond question about. And usually when it comes to attendances, that's very much one of them. No, Keyshawn, I've not played AEW Fight Forever. I heard wonderful, wonderful things. I heard okay things. I heard no things. That's pretty much the lifespan of the game so far. Spider-Boss says, the Devil's still appearing after the Bullet Club Gold is on TV. Do you think we could see who ambushed Jay White when he faces MJF at Full Gear? Quite possibly, if that is indeed the plan. Ed says, hey everyone. Hello, Ed. Nice to see you. Martin says, no worries. Enjoy the membership videos, all who got the memberships. Pardon me. Sean says, surprised both women's championships are being defended at Crown Jewel. I figured they would rotate them. Pardon me. By and large, they do. They're now trying to fit in the women's championships as well, so rotation might be a little bit more often. Spider-Boss says, I think one of my favourite moments in 2023 was when Mercedes money clapped back when Meltzer said her New Japan deal ended in April 30th. To be fair, due to injury at least, she hasn't been wrestling there, but there was some element of confirmation that came after it. I don't believe it was exactly the date, but it was the case that she was wrapping up. One says, let's play Mercedes Money and Britt Baker don't have beef like Punk did with the Elite. Okay. Horsey, fantastic. Says we got gifted 50 new members yesterday, so share the love around. That's amazing, mate. What a derby for you. What a great day for you. Congratulations. Raymond says, is Crown Jewel the end of the line for Cena, or will he stick around for Survivor Series? Every indication I was given was that it would be the end of the line. There do seem to be suggestions now that he might stick around a little bit longer to feature in War Games. Adrian says, hello everyone. I saw WWE start to sign independent wrestlers again. They are signing a number of people that they believe have top-level star power, but they are signing them on less money contracts than a lot of the people that they released recently. Roger says, MJF continues to add unreal in-ring first time ever. He hung with Kenny Omega in every aspect. In certain parts outclassed Omega. The chemistry is incredible. He is a very, very talented man. Richard says, hello Tom, how do you see the Damage Control storyline going? I think I've laid it out quite significantly previously. I personally think Bayley is likely to win the Royal Rumble, and that is all I think you really need to see where it's going. They'll make plenty of money from that one, Sean, certainly from the Rock love that's happening at the moment as well. The Creed brothers and Ivy Nile are going to be called up tonight for WWE Raw. It has been confirmed that the match will be the Alpha Academy versus the Creed brothers. It seems almost as though we're going to see a bit of a change. I can almost see Otis moving from Alpha Academy over to the Creed brothers and seeing what he can do with that particular group. Personally, I do think this is a good addition to a tag team division that's finally starting to get some love. We're seeing DIY versus Imperium tonight as well, for example, and the Women's Tag Team Championships a lot more involved. I have spoken recently about the fact that Triple H wants to relaunch the tag division. The Street Profits in a faction with Bobby Lashley was the beginning of that. But the breakup of Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn has already done damage to the top level, so they need to build some people, and they need to build them fast. Spider-Boss says, I wonder why Britt Baker has been off TV lately. I think since All In she hasn't been on AEW TV. It might just be that it's not her time in the rotation. AEW do have a lot of talent and they do need to rotate them as best they can. Noob says, your favourite moments from 2023 so far, Tom? In a non-wrestling capacity, I've got plenty of them, but I'm not going to go into any detail there because that's very, very personal. What I will say is that I personally have had a very, very good year. A very good year. I went to Paris. I had a great time. I saw Sasha Banks at the Louvre. Life's good. Michael says, I think Britt has been off to tend to Adam Cole. I mean, it's not impossible, but I wouldn't... Huh? Yeah, Dan confirms it. Thank you kindly. Nice to have that confirmation. She has been on TV since, but she's literally off to look after Adam Cole. Fair. No, fair. Cheers, Chris. Nice that you spotted it. Raymond, the exact same thing. Nice that you spotted it and would not let me live it down. Always appreciate that. As regards the Meltzer situation, Dave Meltzer has compared the booking under Tony Khan in AEW to the latter days of Vince McMahon, and of course that is referring to the frustrations that a lot of fans felt when it comes to the late, last-moment booking that Vince McMahon used to inhabit. I still very unfondly remember Bray Wyatt being told that Randy Orton will be beating you in a last-second change in an opening match for WrestleMania Night 2. I believe that was WrestleMania 37? 38? I'm not sure. Recently. And that has caused some frustration. Now, there has been a pushback, the suggestion that when it comes to the booking, thank you, Adrian, when it comes to the booking in question, they are simply making it so that it's harder to leak to the dirt sheets. But here's the thing. It's been confirmed that the dirt sheets in question, the wrestling journalists, are intentionally being fed information by AEW management. AEW management have actually told AEW wrestlers to connect with certain wrestling journalists who work with AEW. And in fact, the wrestling journalists were everything when it came to the launch of AEW. Many wrestling journalists were very open about the fact that they were getting much more access than they would previously, and that was a very good thing for them. As such, you got more favourable coverage, which is going to happen when you have more access. More access means more coverage. It means more headlines, and it means more clicks, more income. If you're going to get better access, you're going to give more favourable access. That's how it works. So when it comes to Dave Meltzer at the moment, he has been historically pro Tony Khan and pro AEW. The CM Punk situation has changed this. We're also seeing a lot more leaking about AEW now than we have done for any time since its inception. For any time since then. Particularly when you look at the situation from All In, the wrestling journalists were all over it. Everyone say hi and bye to the troll, please. The troll will not be here much longer, but for now, they can boost my chat rate. Cheers. So when it comes to the AEW frustration, it has been confirmed to be real by members of AEW back office staff. It is unfortunate that it is happening that way. The reasoning does not exactly ring true for me personally, but I don't have the context in AEW that I do in WWE to confirm it to that degree. What I will say, from what I do know, is that there is some pretty intense frustration with Tony Khan right now, and it is starting to wear thin. Fair enough, backwards. You said hi, you forgot to say bye. I forgive you. Daniela says, Ivy now will be called up with the Creed brothers to Raw. Would be much better that way. She is there at the event, yes. Spider Boss says, Roderick Strong and Tony Storm have the best gimmicks today. They are funny. Rosal says, the Creed's an official call-up because they've had NXT talent appear on the main roster for a match or two, then sent back to NXT. It is being treated and pitched to them as a tryout. To my knowledge, it is a full-time call-up. Yeah, that's a headline, Zane, and a headline that a lot of people used. Dan says that effing Halloween Women's Championship match on AEW Collision was straight out of bad Raw TV. The women's division, unfortunately, in AEW has been bad for a very long time. They just don't get the opportunities, and early on they didn't get the production, and it's a real shame. Sean says, your thoughts on Chase University winning the tag belts in NXT? I don't watch a lot of NXT, unfortunately, because I do need a full-time job in order to make a living doing this. So, unfortunately, I just haven't got to see as much as I would like when it comes to that. So, when it comes to Chase University, I don't really know too much beyond the fact that they're Chase U. What I do think is that a good bit of rotation in the championships is a good thing. I don't know many of the tag teams there, and I do feel they need to help develop those. Zane says, why would CM Punk openly say to the public, yes, I'm just waiting on the phone call back from WWE? It's just ridiculous, like CM Punk is going to tell you or anybody that is headed back to the WWE. Well, he may have told some people. Jay says, hi, happy early Halloween, and happy Halloween to all of you. I don't have a Halloween schematic. I don't really celebrate all that much, or I do now, because now there's kids, but I don't get to go trick-or-treating with them, so do what I can. So I'm trying to... Sorry, I let my frustration out a little bit there. Adrian says, I think AEW will be hot again when TK will give the fans what they want. You put on TV right now the Hardys, Jarrett, Dark Order, Best Friend, QT Marshall and others who are not interesting. That may be the case to you, but for plenty of others, they are reasons to watch. Spider-Bell says, amazing that the Creed brothers got a call to the main roster before even Bron Breakker got a call-up. Simple reason for that is Triple H is rebuilding the tag division. Bron Breakker is now a tag team wrestler. Backward says, where do trolls come from? Well, they see the show, they join the show, they hear me say something about their favourite, they get upset. The troll in this case, subscribe to the channel. Zane says, the Knockout Women's Division in TNA is one of the best women's divisions in wrestling. That's been the case for about 10 years now, or essentially ever since Rosemary existed. I'm a big fan. For those who don't know, I'm a big fan. Michael believes that AEW has been so much better since Punk got fired. The ratings, unfortunately, do not bear that out. Razar says it's been interesting seeing the perception change with AEW. A year or so ago, they could do no wrong. I wonder what changed, because things were never perfect, but the fans just accepted it before. I believe, as has been mentioned, there is a honeymoon period. Also, that moment when they had Punk, Adam Cole, and Bryan Danielson, that was a huge moment. A huge moment. And it really did change the dynamic in wrestling. AEW was in the ascendancy. It had all of the momentum in that moment. In many ways, I think what changed isn't AEW. I think it's Triple H. I think WWE got rid of the villain and they... Okay, so I've explained this before. WWE as a company is a heel. Why? Because of the Montreal Screwjob. Because Vince McMahon saw profit in the company being evil. So people genuinely at times believe that the company is evil. It doesn't hurt that Vince McMahon is the guy who's in charge of it, because we know things about Vince McMahon. It's not hard to see him as the guy worth hating, particularly with the Montreal Screwjob, is of course how they started. Now, that's what made the WWE the biggest game in town. That Vince McMahon made his company a heel. Meanwhile, in WCW, the NWO were the heels, but WCW was the face. The problem is, WCW was a loser. And I don't mean in ratings, I mean he was losing to the NWO. So why would you rate for WCW? Why would you get behind it? WWE, meanwhile, you were tuning in to see the heel get their comeuppance. The NWO didn't. That's what put them on the map. When AEW arrives, they're the faces. They're the faces rising up to challenge the heel. Then the heel does a face turn. And Triple H is the guy in front. And suddenly, that's all gone. And for me, it really is that simple. Leon says, do you think Drew will re-sign? Let's talk about this. So, there were rumours out there that Fightful Select decided to squash by saying that Drew McIntyre has not signed a new deal. For those who are regular watchers of Spoiler Warning, you're already aware that Drew McIntyre has not signed a new deal, and at the moment there is still plenty to be happening before we actually get to that point. So when it comes to WWE, when it comes to Drew McIntyre, some of the releases that have been happening is to fund moments like this, bringing in Jade Cargill, working out new contracts for Drew McIntyre, for Becky Lynch. But with AEW in the position that it's in, there isn't necessarily a belief that top-level wrestlers want to go there. Edge is an exception, but the WWE for a while haven't seen him as a top-level wrestler. He's been nowhere near championships for a long time for that reason. When it comes to the WWE contracts of Drew McIntyre and Becky Lynch, there is a long-term negotiation to happen, but that won't happen yet. We're still plenty of months away, and there is a discussion of Drew McIntyre's contract being extended because of the time he took off between WrestleMania and, of course, Money in the Bank, when I reported he'd be returning to start building towards a SummerSlam match for the Intercontinental Championship with Gunther. So, he's not actually anywhere close to finishing his contract just yet. The WWE are confident that they're the only game in town once again, and there are a number of things to discuss. As I previously mentioned, Drew McIntyre wants championships. Money is not the main thing. It's championships. This match at Crown Jewel goes a long way to convincing him to stay. Eric says, do you think Triple H is rebuilding the WWE Women's Tag Team division? Yes, I reported that previously. Big Dave Meltzer fan says, don't believe every report he says. Well, how is it that you're a Dave Meltzer fan but you're saying don't believe his reports? Seems counterintuitive. But I respect your opinion. Let's not believe Dave Meltzer, guys. Brad says, Rosemary is amazing. Yes, she is. Adrian says, is Sarah Amato the key of NXT Women's Division's success? There's many people involved, okay? Many people. Sarah Amato is definitely one of them. Raymond, thank you kindly, says, Tom is the most reliable pro wrestling journalist out there. We all appreciate his work and deserves our support. Trolls aren't needed here. Thank you very kindly for that endorsement, Raymond. I appreciate it. Roger says, Rosemary is a new gimmick. Courtney Rush, that's her name. Now she looks different. I can see that Dan's giving you a bit of context on that as well. Leon says, I wonder if Joe Gacy will get a call-up soon. Doesn't seem like there's any plans for him in NXT after his faction fell apart. Unfortunately, that seems to be the case for a few. As I reported for a while now, call-ups have been cancelled a lot, and it's really starting to impact a lot of the development of people down there. Spider-Boss says, I always wonder why fans never see when Triple H does something wrong, because Vince McMahon is right there to blame instead. Eric says, Vince McMahon made the WWE the evil empire. Big Dave Meltzer fan says, here we go again with the lie. I'd imagine that's when we were talking about Dave Meltzer, because you were talking about Dave Meltzer and don't believe him. So I'd imagine that's talking about when we talked about Dave Meltzer, right? Confirm for me. Eddie said, with the news of Lance Anoa'i, Finau and Hammerstone asking for their releases, do you think they want to go to WWE? I think it's possible. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to. Adrian says, I think AJ and Sheamus could go in AEW. Interest in Sheamus to WWE continues to be very, very high. The WWE do not want to let him go. As regards AJ Styles, to my knowledge, the last contract he signed, he was looking at that as potentially his final one. And it is a limited date, which really suits what he's going for at the moment. Big Dave Meltzer fan says, WWE fired a lot of talent because they want to pay Becky and Drew McIntyre. I mean, that's not entirely what I said. There was a lot of context to it, but you're entitled to your opinion. And if you think they fired people for Becky and Drew McIntyre, well, then you throw that in there. Martin says, Evil Empire, sorry, missed last 5 minutes, was busy. Martin, I was talking about the fact that Vince McMahon saw it as profitable to make himself and his company the heel. And that's one of the reasons AEW gained the momentum that it did when it first started out, but was then undercut by losing the villain, Vince McMahon. Spider-Boss says, do you think the Judgment Day needs some comedy? I mentioned this because Sami Zayn added comedy to the Bloodline and made it better. He did make it better. Judgment Day is quite different. I believe the comedy there is at their expense. So, for example, Dominic Mysterio. Dan says, I think Big Dave Meltzer fan is really Brian Alvarez defending his dad. Wow. Razal says, do you think WWE should be concerned about losing female talent to other things like OnlyFans if they don't pay more and not just other wrestling companies? Yes and no. So, when it comes to concepts like OnlyFans, other sites, I can't really remember the name of many of them. OnlyFans is obviously the biggest one at this point in time. It does allow them to connect with fans in different ways. I want to be clear here, OnlyFans isn't necessarily adult content. That said, if somebody wants to launch a website where they sell adult content, all power to them. Like, I believe, and this is something that I don't talk about much, I believe we are moving towards a world where, because of the lack of privacy that we all experience, because we are all constantly on camera, we are moving towards a world where privacy is no longer accepted or wanted. Now, the generations like below me, as it were, they're always on camera. The amount of times one of my children will be on camera in a group chat while doing their homework, watching TV, cleaning their room. It's just the way they communicate. I think a lot of this has to do with the pandemic. But this also goes to, in general, a lessening of societal norms as regards nudity and sexually explicit content. I don't think it's a bad thing because it removes the element of shame. And I don't believe we should have shame about our bodies. I really don't believe that. So I do hope that one day the WWE changes its mind and allows people who want to create explicit content or just different content to do so. If someone wants to express themselves, they should be permitted to do that. If someone wants to make money from expressing themselves, then they should be permitted to do that, in my opinion. I believe that we had big moments when people's private content, private belongings were leaked and millions of people went out and just saw them. I give immense credit to people who were able to continue after that, to have amazing, I'm not going to name any names, to have amazing careers, and to say, dead in the eye, you can't beat me. I'm not ashamed. And I believe moments like that moved our entire society more towards an acceptance that we are people and sexuality is part of being people. The vast majority of us have a sense of sexuality. Even those that don't are entitled to that. We shouldn't be ashamed to like who and what we like. That's what I believe. That said, before this gets taken out of context, there is a reason some things are illegal, and they should still be. Just being very clear on that one. She also says, Medusa speaking on a trash talk, she believes Charlotte will retire after her current contract expires. I mean, I don't personally see that. Depends how long the contract goes. Vegeta says, why would Sheamus ever go there? And AJ said he wants to retire in WWE. Certainly people can share their opinions. Ross says, Vince the heel versus Austin was genius, although he was heel many ways before that. Screw job, tell you. Martin says, group chats are now the norm, to be honest, and it's scary as well. Good education is needed on it to stay safe. Yes, it is. Obviously, when it comes to young children in group chats, they won't think before they get changed. Just clue them in. Just clue them in. Martin says, I agree, but it's a digital footprint youngsters never think about. It is something that can never be deleted. That I agree with, which is why, as you absolutely rightly say, education is so important. We also want to be very, very clear that we're not raising the next generation of dick pickers. Nobody wants that. Nobody. Then he says, Baron Corbin's momentum has elevated immensely since returning to NXT in late May. Apparently so much so that Corbin is pondering the idea of staying in WWE developmental. Where are you getting that from, Zane? Eddie says, if WWE gets Hammerstone, it could be the next Hogan. I get it, Martin. I completely get it, and I completely support what you're saying there. I agree with it. I try and educate my children as best I can, and hopefully that's something that other parents are doing as well. Well, step-parents are doing as well. So, I'm going to do Shane McMahon. There was an update as to the recovery of Shane McMahon. He is still in rehab. A return is not forthcoming, but he is hoping to return to working with the WWE when he is able to do so. Triple H, I'm told, is not too keen on the idea of Shane McMahon getting back out there in the ring, but Shane McMahon has been backstage at a couple of WWE events, largely just visiting, but is likely to be a little more involved when it comes to production than you might think. He annoyed a lot of people with the Royal Rumble way back when. Triple H giving him some coaching would be good for everyone involved, I do feel. Spider-Boss says, fans love to hate Vince McMahon. Fans always find a reason to blame Vince for all, even when he isn't on creative anymore. Robin Dave says, question about the part-time contracts. Who comes with the dates, the wrestlers or the WWE? It is an active negotiation. So one side will say, I want this. The other side will say, we want this. And then they'll work out what they can do as regards meeting in the middle. Dan says, as a person who runs a women's wrestling promotion called Eve, I sadly also get dick pics sent to me by people who don't think. Jesus Christ. My concern is, a lot of these people are simply completely idiotic and very, very stupid. A lot of them are actively malicious. But I also think some of them are porn addicts who've watched porn and seen that, well, if you watch porn, she saw a dick and then she fell madly in love. I've just got to send her mine and it'll work. I worry so much about these people. So much. Spider-Man says, Shane McMahon, the best in the world, Shane McMahon. That's the badger. Thank you, Roger. Appreciate that for dropping the sauce. Martin says, spot on, Tom. I'm all for digital, etc. and growing, and it's a great thing, but children never think of consequences or how it can't ever be fully deleted. Very, very true. I think, unfortunately, that will force a lot of people to develop that change in society that we're talking about. I think, unfortunately, that is going to happen, and it's, yeah. Anyway. Raymond says, any thoughts on Alexis King debut? Have not seen it. I like to think so, Dan. I like to think I've got a good read on this. Unfortunately, when it comes to the world of streaming, you do kind of have to follow the porn trends, because when it comes to anything digital, porn always gets there first. I learned that from Tropic Thunder, which I watched recently. Basically, whoever porn backs in the battle between VHS and Betamax, in the battle between CD and DVD, porn wins. I mean, I'm streaming right now, and the streaming software, literally the streaming software I'm using, the streaming platforms and all of this, the live streaming as a concept, where did it start? You want to know what's going to be trending? You got to keep an eye on porn. Don't like it, but it is what it is. Also, to be fair, not all porn is bad. Sean says, who's next for Gunter? There's a number of people queuing up for the opportunity. I would love John Cena, but we are where we are. Spider-Boss says, it's been funny to see Becky Lynch on TikTok. Her last TikTok video with Seth Rollins was very funny. Eddie says, any update on besides Berlin and Perth for PLEs outside US? Paris has, of course, been mentioned, and there will be a UK show next year as well. So, 2 more things to discuss. A point was raised in a spat between Raj Giri and Sean Ross Sapp as regards money in wrestling. And I just want to be really, really clear with you guys. I've always tried to be as transparent as possible. As transparent as possible. Wrestling in the Movie says, there's so much porn on the internet, I found myself shaking my fist in anger. You've waited too long to say that, haven't you? Too long. Too long. Anyway. Wasn't ready for that. Wasn't ready with that, Dan. Was not ready for that. Raj Giri, Sean Ross Sapp had a bit of a spat about money in wrestling media. And let me be very, very clear. I promise you, when it comes to making full-time money, there are only a handful of people who make a living from doing wrestling media. There isn't money in wrestling media. There isn't. It's one of the reasons I started this YouTube channel, because working for sites like Daily DDT and Sportskeeda, they weren't paying the bills. They really weren't. Also, in general, they weren't very fun. Daily DDT certainly wasn't. Sportskeeda, I had a very good time. But let's just say, when there are other people working for Sportskeeda trying to subtweet and complaining to the bosses, it's not fun. It's not fun. So, when it comes to Wrestling Inc., I believe for a large part of it, Raj Giri was the only one really making money. When it comes to Fightful, Fightful Select creates salaries for people. But I promise you, Sean Ross Sapp is the only one really making money. Dave Meltzer, Brian Alvarez, Wade Keller. I think that's pretty much it, genuinely, who are making full-time money. Other people who are making a large amount of money in the wrestling field, or at least money to live on, will be people like my fellow streamer Wrestling Days. JD from NY. They will be making more money than the vast majority of people you know in wrestling media. Ariel Hawani Chris is obviously someone who's making money in media. He's not just wrestling media, and that's why he's doing okay. Wrestling journalism doesn't pay, which is why a lot of wrestling journalists, or a lot of people who try to become wrestling journalists, get caught in the trap of, I need to report, I need to report, I need to report. And because they start going viral, they start making money, they get desperate and they start reporting things which 100% aren't true. When you look at people such as PWE, Zero News, who've reported a lot and been proven wrong quite a lot as well, you will note that there is no face, there is no name, and with that, there is no accountability. I am not making a lot of money from this. I do need the full-time day job. I've always been very transparent with you guys around that. I made a couple of £1,000 last year, which is not living on money, but it's also very, very good money. And the vast majority of that, 2/3 I would say, comes from the generosity of individuals. And we've seen that in the chat today. We've had, if I drop into the fan funding section, a donation from Martin, a donation from Will, and 5 gifted subs from Martin as well. We've had quite a bit of fan funding. I appreciate all of you for doing that and for supporting the channel in that way. I really do. This is very, very difficult to make a living from. Dan also raises an excellent point. The vast majority of wrestlers also have full-time jobs. In many ways, if you look at the football pyramid, if you're in the football league, you're a full-time footballer. So there are hundreds upon hundreds, thousands upon thousands of spots for people. In wrestling, you could be working for, New Japan, for Impact, and still not be making a living. I don't know what else to really say on that one, but it's going to hit you and it's going to hit you hard. I don't want anyone to believe that I'm rolling in it and laughing at you here. I'm not. I'm very appreciative for all your generosity. I've used it to fund some advertising, to fund new editing software. I'll be upgrading the PC, stuff like that. All the money you give goes back into this because I thankfully do okay in my day job. I can at least look after my kids, you know? When it comes to the world of wrestling, it's a labour of love. And I want to point out that the vast majority of people working in wrestling are genuine, decent, hard-working people who you would genuinely never notice because they're not going viral, because they're not trying to go viral. They're just trying to do a good job. I want to shout out a number of people here. Stephanie Chase, Rick Ucchino, Kristen Ashley. These are just free names of people that I hugely respect, whose work is exemplary, and who deserve a lot more attention than they get. I really do feel that if there's one thing I can do, or that I hope to do, it's shine a light on people who are just trying to do a good job and who love wrestling so much that they commit their time and love to it. Okay? That's all I wanted to say on that one. Because while everyone else is arguing and spitting and picking feuds, I just think we should be showing some love to some very talented people. No, Martin, no it isn't. Raymond says, I'd love to see Bronson Reed and Gunter one more time. Love the physicality of the first match. Spider-Boss says, what do you think about LA Knight's push? I mention this because fans see LA Knight as the best thing on WWE today. Some fans do, just to be clear. It's very dogmatic of you there. Spider-Boss, a word that we are going to be throwing out there a lot. I'm liking LA Knight's push. I'm also liking that it has an end date and then we sort of reset. Right, got you, Roger. Thank you. No worries, Martin. For those who don't know, I sent a video on to Martin with essentially, it was a breakdown of different ways that you can do YouTube advertising and the benefits that they give you. So some of them, for example, just throw subscribers at you but not views. Some of them throw views at you, but they're not going to subscribe. Still probably the right move, but it depends where those views are coming from. Lot to it. He did Wrestling the Movies. He genuinely did. Absolutely, WrestleBuzz. He's shouted me out before. I absolutely respect the work he does. Absolutely. I might not be hosting a watch party for SmackDown as regularly as I'd like right now, and I don't host one for Raw. I usually put over OLE, and I absolutely continue to do so. But Wrestling Days does good work. Good guy. Man says, what? YouTube isn't paying bills? Who'd have thunk it? I thought we were all millionaires. There are definitely some moments where I wish I could use the YouTube money to pay a couple of awkward bills, but I stand by where I am. The income has increased over the years, and honestly, that's all I really want. Wrestling in the Movie says, my wrestling books sell okay, but it's entirely contingent upon word of mouth and Twitter. Twitter is pretty horrible for attracting wrestling fans who aren't mean-spirited and hateful, I find. I agree with that entirely. It's a very fair point. Man says, to make proper money, and I mean proper money in football YouTube, you're talking over 100k subs with similar views and sponsorship as well. Sponsorship I feel I need to work on, but I need to learn how to do that. I'm not very good at it. Watch Eve Wrestling on YouTube. Not sponsored. Just, you know, Dan comes in here all the time. And honestly, if you want good wrestling, it's fantastic stuff. Well worth watching. Chris says it's the same for the film industry. Those that made it big in Hollywood is only a small percentage compared to those who work in film. Very, very true. Man says why many have a Patreon as well and memberships, etc. as each ad is pence. And I mean pence. Literally. To give you some context, the CM Punk video, the very first one that I built the current slate of Sunday videos from, received in its first couple of days 2,500 views. I made $2.30. That was a great video. You will note that so far in this video I have 179 views. Not making a huge amount of money in that way, which is why I'm so thankful for the fan funding. And it's why also, by the way, you may have noticed that when the show ends, I start clicking the show ad button just before you leave. Up some money a little bit. Zane says, do you think Denise Salcedo is a good YouTuber? Denise Salcedo is on this YouTube channel. Do a search for Tom Colohue, Denise Salcedo. You will find her work. So, yes, I genuinely think she's good at what she does. Mine says, thoughts on people thinking Ellie Nash is a Rock 2.0? I wouldn't want to say at this point, because that's one of the things that Cy believes. What I will say is that when it comes to wrestling, it's hard to be original, particularly when it comes to, if you want to make it to the top level, emulate the greats. It's not the wrong thing to do. Rob and Dave says, I know it's possible, but I would be shocked if LA Knight wins a title. Anything is possible in wrestling. I would be very, very shocked. Eric says, how much money do you receive from YouTube? So last year I made about 3,000 in that region once I'd paid tax. And that 3,000 I essentially laid out for the rest of the year as going back into the channel. And I've been using that to try and help things develop. It's one of the reasons that I've been using a bit of advertising for the Sunday videos. You will note that my subscriber number went up quite a bit. I was testing the water with the new YouTube advertising system. It basically got me subscribers and about a 10% boost on views. That's good. Loving the boost on views, but it got me almost 100% extra subscribers and only 10% views, which is why I haven't gone back to it. I don't just want numbers. The number of subscribers actually doesn't mean much. It really doesn't. Viewers count. If you actually want to make money, it's about convincing people to stay. The average view duration on this live is 17 minutes 43 seconds. That will guarantee YouTube advertise this show in future. No worries, Dan. I mean, you've certainly taught me a lot. You're very, very knowledgeable about what you do. Tell you that. Shouldn't surprise anyone. Wrestling at the Movie says, my biggest hate at the minute with wrestling journalism is all these chat GPT ads, writing content and being pushed as real articles by journalists. It's beyond idle. Mine says, why I'm so grateful on tips and help and collaborations, as it helps to grow, but it has to be for love and not just to make money, and solely that. Absolutely. If you don't love it, it's not going to come out in the passion and people aren't going to commit to watching it. Mine says, spot on, as we showed a few weeks back when we did the stats. Raymond says, LA Knight should lose at Crown Jewel, then start to program a Logan Paul for the Rumble and take the US title from him there. Personally, I think that match will happen at WrestleMania. A quick update on what I talked about on Friday. I've received a huge amount of very well-intentioned and very, very good messages from people checking in and just checking that I'm okay. I do want to be very, very clear. I am okay. I do sometimes... I explained it. My depression is clinical, which means that my brain sometimes just tells me to be depressed. It tells me to hate myself. I've learned over the years to recognize it's coming, so I sort of withdraw a little bit and I stop it. It takes a lot of effort. It's very draining, which is why I've not been doing the SmackDown watch parties. I am okay. I really appreciate the concern and the love that everyone has sent. I'm really grateful for that. I am okay. And if I do need any of you, I will reach out because there were so many lovely messages. All those messages are why I'm okay. Because the time when I started this, I didn't feel like I had anyone who actually genuinely cared. That is simply no longer the case. Simply isn't the case anymore. Okay? I know that I'm loved, that I'm cared for, and that people would miss me if I went anywhere. I'm not planning on going anywhere. I just need to bunker in a little bit and look after myself. Okay? I do fear that I scared people a little bit. I'm okay. Gotcha, Martin. Thank you kindly. Roger says, I hate clickbait YouTubers. Yeah, me too. Dan says, I disagree that LA Knight is Rock 2.0 personally. Has similar traits, but watch the Attitude Era. They all did. Like you say, you can always see similarities. Billy Graham, Jesse Ventura, Hulk Hogan. To be fair, people talk about Ric Flair. Most people don't remember that he basically stole his entire character. Spider-Boss says, best wishes for you, Tom. It's always good to know about wrestling news on Spoiler Warning. Thank you kindly. I'm going to wrap it up there. We will be back on Friday for more Spoiler Warning, and I'm currently considering what to do for Wednesday for a video for the members only. Also, we will be doing a Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure Crown Jewel preview mailbag edition on Wednesday. Please do pop in for that one with your questions for myself and for Nick. Those shows are always a great time, and I'd very much appreciate you dropping in for them. Until then, I'm going to wrap it up. as ever I do, because of my OCD, I need a catchphrase, by saying that I've been Tom Colohue, you have been fantastic, and I'll see you all very soon.